Hi, welcome to our next episode on Alexander the Great and his campaigns. With Persepolis in ruins and its treasures secured, Alexander the Great turned his attention to the unfinished business that gnawed at him. The capture of Darius III, the Persian Great King, though defeated and his empire crumbling, was still at large a symbol of potential resistance. In the summer of 330 BCE, Alexander launched a relentless, high-speed pursuit across the vast and arid landscapes of northern Persia, determined to run his royal quarry to ground. The destruction of Persepolis in May 330 BCE was a symbolic culmination of Alexander's war of revenge against the Achaemenid Empire. However, the war was not yet truly over as long as Darius III, the legitimate Great King, remained alive and at liberty. Darius had fled eastward from Gaugamela into Media, the ancient heartland of the Median Empire, before it was incorporated into the Achaemenid state. He established himself temporarily at Ecbatana, modern Hamadan, another of the Persian royal capitals, hoping to gather new forces from the eastern satrapies, Bactria, Sogdia, Aria, Arachosia, and others, which were still loyal to him and possessed significant military resources. Alexander, after allowing his army some rest following the sack of Persepolis and the subsequent celebrations, was determined to prevent Darius from consolidating any new resistance. He marched north from Persepolis towards Media, aiming to confront Darius at Ecbatana. As Alexander approached, Darius, realizing his newly gathered forces were insufficient to face the victorious Macedonians, made the decision to abandon Ecbatana and continue his flight eastward. His plan was to retreat into the remote and rugged satrapy of Bactria, governed by his kinsman and powerful satrap Bessus. Bactria, with its mountainous terrain and warlike population, offered a strong base from which to continue the struggle. Darius left Ecbatana with a dwindling retinue which included Bessus Barsainches, satrap of Arachosia, and Drungiana, Satibarzines, satrap of Aria, Nabazanes, commander of the royal cavalry at Issus and Gaugamela, his remaining Greek mercenaries under patron of Phocis and Artabazus, an elderly and highly respected Persian noble who remained loyal. The treasures of Ecbatana were either taken with him or hastily secured. Upon reaching Ecbatana, Alexander found the city undefended and Darius already gone. He seized the remaining Persian treasury there, another vast sum. It was at Ecbatana that Alexander made a significant announcement regarding the nature of his expedition. He declared that the Pan-Hellenic War of revenge against Persia, for which the League of Corinth had been formed, was now officially over. The objectives, defeating the Great King, destroying his power, and avenging past wrongs, had been achieved. He formally discharged his allied Greek contingents, paying them generously and offering them the option to return home or to re-enlist in his army as mercenaries. Many chose to return, laden with booty, but a significant number, attracted by the prospect of further adventure and wealth, opted to stay with Alexander. This decision effectively transformed the nature of Alexander's army from a Greek-co-Macedonian alliance into a more personal, Macedonian-led imperial force. Having reorganized his affairs, Alexander then launched a relentless pursuit of Darius. He left Parmenion, his veteran second-in-command, at Ecbatana with a substantial force to guard the captured treasure, secure Median territory, and maintain communications with the west. Alexander himself, with his best infantry and cavalry, particularly the companions, Agrionians, and archers, set off at incredible speed eastward, following Darius's trail towards the Caspian Gates, a narrow pass leading into the plains of Parthia. The pursuit was grueling. Alexander drove his men mercilessly through arid, difficult terrain, often marching day and night with minimal rest. He was determined to catch Darius before he could reach the safety of Bactria and mobilize its formidable resources. The speed of his advance was astonishing, covering vast distances in remarkably short times. He pushed his horses and men to the very limits of their endurance. As Darius fled, his situation became increasingly desperate. His retinue was shrinking, morale was collapsing, and the loyalty of his remaining followers was wavering. The Greek mercenaries under Patron remained loyal, but some of the Persian nobles, led by Bessus, the ambitious satrap of Bactria, began to see Darius as an obstacle. They believed that if Darius were removed, they might be able to make peace with Alexander. Or perhaps Bessus himself harbored ambitions to seize the throne and lead a more effective resistance from the eastern satrapies. A conspiracy began to form around Bessus, Nabasanes, and Barsanes. They argued that Darius, having lost to major battles and abandoned his capitals, was no longer fit to lead. They plotted to depose him and, if necessary, hand him over to Alexander to secure favorable terms for themselves. Or, if Alexander pressed them too hard, to kill Darius and continue the fight under new leadership. Artabazus and the Greek mercenaries under Patron vehemently opposed this treachery and urged Darius to rely on them for his protection. But Darius, perhaps indecisive or trusting his Persian kinsmen too much, failed to act decisively against the conspirators. Alexander, receiving intelligence of Darius's location and the growing dissent within his camp, redoubled his efforts. He selected his fittest and best mounted troops for a final, desperate dash. Leaving the rest of his infantry to follow as best they could, he led this elite cavalry force on a non-stop, lightning-fast pursuit. They rode through the night, covering incredible distances. The conspirators, learning of Alexander's terrifyingly close approach, finally made their move. They seized Darius, bound him, and placed him in a covered wagon, intending to either deliver him to Alexander or carry him off to Bactria as a prisoner. They tried to force the loyal Greek mercenaries to join their treason, but Patron and his men refused and withdrew, later making their way to Alexander. Artabazus and his sons also separated from the conspirators, unwilling to be part of their treachery. Alexander, after an exhausting all-night ride, finally caught up with the rear of the Persian column near Hekatampilos in Parthia, near modern Damgan, Iran. The conspirators, seeing Alexander's dust cloud approaching, panicked. They urged Darius to mount a horse and flee with them. When Darius refused, either out of dignity or an inability to ride due to his bonds, they stabbed him repeatedly with javelins and daggers, then abandoned him in his wagon and scattered Bessus and his closest associates, fleeing towards Bactria. Alexander and his exhausted vanguard arrived on the scene only moments later. According to Plutarch, a Macedonian soldier named Polystratus found Darius still alive, though mortally wounded, in the wagon. Darius, parched with thirst, reportedly asked for water. After drinking, he is said to have thanked Polystratus for his kindness, lamented his own misfortunes, and expressed gratitude that Alexander had treated his captive family honorably. He then died, just as Alexander himself rode up. The sight of his once mighty adversary, the great king of Persia, lying dead in such wretched circumstances, reportedly moved Alexander. He covered Darius's body with his own cloak, a gesture of respect. The long hunt was over. Darius III, the last Achaemenid king of an empire that had lasted for over 2 centuries, was dead, not at Alexander's hand, but at the hands of his own treacherous kinsmen and satraps. If you loved this, share it with your fellow history buffs, and hit that subscribe button for more awesome videos.